I'm not a writer or a professional witness or anything like that. I work alone, too much sometimes, and I have the bad habit of jotting everything down in a small notebook I've carried for years. It's not a journal, not a report, more like a way to remind myself that some things really did happen, that I didn't imagine them. But what I'm leaving here is different. I'm not writing this for me. I'm writing it because someone, anyone, needs to know it wasn't an animal, or an intruder, or any of the easy explanations you invent when something goes beyond logic. It all started Thursday, a little past 8 at night. I was walking along the south riverbank of the forest, checking some stakes we'd placed days earlier after a minor landslide. It was a quiet area, but extremely isolated, with aging pines that seemed to lean towards you as if listening. I had a flashlight, a radio, and my notebook. Nothing else. While I was checking the markers, I heard the first sound, a deep crack, not of branches snapping, but of something big shifting its weight. I stopped. I turned off my flashlight on instinct. I don't even know why. Maybe because the silence that followed was so complete, it scared me to break it. I took a deep breath, stepped forward twice, and the sound came again, closer this time. Then I saw movement. Not a flicker, not a reflection, a massive, dark body shifting position behind a fallen trunk. My first thought was a bear, but I dismissed that immediately. This one was upright, far too upright. I turned the flashlight back on with a trembling thumb. The beam hit the figure for just a second, but it was enough. Impossible shoulders, matted hair, and something worse, the unmistakable sense that it knew I was there. It didn't look at me right away. First it inhaled, a long, wet breath, as if smelling me before moving. Then, in one sudden motion, it locked its eyes on me. I stepped back. The radio hit my leg with a hard thud. That was all it took. What it did next left no room for doubt. It charged. It wasn't a leap, it was a full-on rush. Every stride tore into the ground. It ran almost hunched forward, arms tense, enormous hands open, as if it intended to knock me down in a single hit. I tried to activate the radio, but my fingers wouldn't respond. The flashlight slipped from my hand, spinning on the ground and casting erratic beams that only made everything more disorienting. I ran the opposite way, but it was faster. I heard it break thick branches like they were nothing. I felt the air shift behind me. When I reached the edge of the ravine, it was already on top of me. I didn't have time to think. I threw myself onto the ground just as its arm swept through the space where my chest had been. The force was so immense, it ripped a chunk of bark from the trunk beside me and sent it flying several meters. I rolled downhill uncontrollably, hitting roots and rocks. I heard it coming after me, not rolling, but descending in long, furious strides as though the terrain meant nothing to it. I staggered to my feet and kept running between the trees. I could hear its breathing behind me, closer than I can comfortably admit even now. I don't know how, but a fallen trunk wedged between two rocks gave me a chance. I slid underneath, crawling. It tried to follow, but got stuck for a moment. 1 second, just one. But it was enough for me to gain some distance. I reached the main path with my whole body trembling and my clothes torn. I didn't look back. I couldn't. I'm writing this now because I understand that what happened wasn't a warning or an intimidation. That thing wanted to reach me, and if it didn't, it wasn't for lack of trying.
The forest had always had its own rhythm, one I knew well after so many years working in remote areas. But that afternoon, as I made my way toward the frozen creek to check a report of strange noises, I knew from the first moment that something was wrong. It wasn't a concrete fear, just the immediate sense that the forest was holding its breath. The trail descended through old birches twisted by the weather. Sunlight filtered through the leaves like shards of glass. Everything looked normal, But it didn't sound normal. No birds sang. Not one. I hadn't experienced that kind of silence during storms or even wildfires. It was a silence that felt imposed. I reached the creek. The water barely flowed, cold as metal. That was where people had reported knocks during the night, sharp, repetitive strikes. I crouched to inspect the stones. Some were displaced, but there were no boot prints, no tool marks. That's when I noticed something odd. The water was cloudy in one very specific spot, as if something heavy had submerged there just minutes earlier. I took out my notebook to write, when, on the other side of the creek, a tree crashed down with such force it nearly buckled my knees. There was no wind, no large animals in sight. I followed the creek's edge to investigate, but with every step I felt more and more watched. The air shifted. I felt it on my skin before I heard anything. It was as if the temperature had suddenly dropped. I looked around for a reason. No clouds, no breeze, nothing that explained the sudden cold. Then I heard the first sound, a deep exhale. Not a growl, not an animal snort, a human exhale, but too heavy, as if it came from a colossal chest. It came from deep in the forest. I froze. The exhale repeated, closer, then another, this time behind me. I stepped back, then again. I didn't want to run yet, not until I understood where it was. I swept my flashlight across the trees, but all I illuminated were massive trunks and long shadows. No movement. Yet every time I breathed, I wasn't the only one doing it. The third sound wasn't a breath. It was a knock, like the impact of a giant hand against a hollow trunk. It echoed through the forest like a message. That was when I realized I wasn't surrounded by multiple creatures, just one that knew how to move without being seen. A branch snapped to my right, then another higher up. The rhythm was slow, calculated, as if it were testing the distance. My body reacted before my mind did. I leapt across the creek, soaking my entire boot. I hadn't gone 5 meters when something crashed behind me with such force it splashed the water. I swung my flashlight back. A massive log, ripped from the ground, not cut, not fallen, ripped. And there were no trees of that size lying around. The forest stopped hiding it. I didn't see it completely, only its silhouette, immense, moving between the birches like a shadow from another age. A shoulder wider than the door of my truck, a hand slipping between the trunks, barely resting on them, leaving deep marks in the bark as if it were clay. I ran. I didn't think, didn't plan, just ran until my legs burned. The sound of my footsteps was the only one in the entire forest. It didn't run. It followed, calmly, as if it knew I would eventually have to stop. When I finally reached the service road, the forest regained its sounds. The wind, the birds, everything returned at once, as if whatever was behind me no longer needed to silence them. I never went back to the creek, and I won't, ever.
I never thought a volunteer trail restoration job would put me face to face with something I'm still not sure my brain has fully processed. I'm not a ranger, not a guide, not even a frequent explorer. I was just one of the many people who spent weekends clearing eroded areas and repairing rustic footbridges. That's why, when I tell this story, people assume I'm exaggerating or misinterpreting what I saw. I wish that were true. We started early that day. The group split into 3 teams, and I was assigned to check an old wooden footbridge that crossed a seasonal creek. The bridge had been to inspect the left support. The soil was disturbed, fresh, as if something massive had dragged itself through. There were no clear footprints, no recognizable marks, but the pattern suggested something had pushed the earth outward. I stared at it, trying to understand the shape when a strong, metallic-tinged smell drifted up from beneath the bridge. I straightened slowly and heard a crack to my right. Not a small animal sound. Branches bent, crushed by something heavy pushing through. I turned. Nothing. Just motionless pines. Then came a second crack, closer, followed by a labored breath. Deep, uneven, dragging. The forest does not breathe like that. No deer, no bear, nothing in those woods makes that sound. I stepped back twice, and the bridge let out a long wooden groan. I thought it was my weight, until I saw a huge shadow sliding out from under the deck, like something that had been between the lower beams. It didn't register at first. The head appeared slowly, dark, covered in damp hair, moving with a deliberate slowness that froze my blood. Then an arm emerged, and that was when I knew I needed to run. I didn't make a sound, yet it had already locked onto me. It rotated its entire body toward me and rose from beneath the structure in a single motion, tearing one of the old supports with its back. It didn't roar. It didn't unleash some monstrous scream. It discharged, straight, violent, with an impact that made the ground vibrate. I ran uphill as fast as I could, hearing it break branches behind me. At one point, I heard it lunge forward, trying to close the distance in a single move. I dove to the side just in time. I glimpsed it rushing past me, a dark mass moving without hesitation, slamming into a tree that split in half on impact. That collision saved me. It didn't stop immediately, as if regaining its balance took effort. I used that moment to keep climbing the ravine. When I reached the top, I didn't look back. I only listened as its breathing faded, slowly, as if it had decided not to leave its territory. I don't know how long I sat up there, shaking. I only know that since that day, I avoid old bridges and any sound that comes from beneath the ground.